Hey there, folks. Welcome to our run of The Between, a game published by The Gauntlet, which is about hunters in a Victorian London dealing with supernatural threats and the growing threat of a mastermind. It explores themes of political unrest, forbidden sexuality and desire, a whole lot of interesting stuff. Before we get too far into things, I want to just do a quick round of introductions, remind folks where we're at. I am Stephen, he, him. I am the GM for this run of The Between. If we could go around, we'll do clockwise from me. So actually, no, I don't know why I'm doing it that clockwise, because we have the character keeper. If we could just go by character keeper order today, and I think that opens us on you, Brandon. If you
Sure.
introduce yourself, your name, anything you want to plug, and who you're playing, or your pronouns, I should say.
I'm Brandon. Uh, I'm playing the Countess Annalisa von Thorn, is the undeniable playbook. A woman who claims to be a Viennese countess, but is clearly something more than that. She has a she is as the undeniable is. She is beautiful. And her beauty is aggressively eternal, as it is described. She has a very she has spoken at times as if she wasn't quite human, and it remains to be seen whether or not that is true, or it is an affectation that she has. Her vice, which we have seen in action, is comforting the dying. She seems to be very drawn to the dying, and she claims to be a psychopath. That is to say, an entity that leads a dying person on to the next world, whatever it may be for them. There is a secret cathedral. There is a cathedral that is secretly a temple. It's not a secret cathedral. It's a very well-known cathedral, which has a chapel to it seems like a perfectly ordinary chapel to a mainline Episcopalian saint, Anglican saint, I should say, but is in fact actually a temple to her. And the depiction of Mary resembles her in a certain way, and the artwork emphasizes to a great degree thorns, thorn bushes, Christ's crown of thorns, and things like that. And all of those are the worshippers' references to her and her perhaps assumed name. That's all.
Great. And David, if you want to introduce yourself, your pronouns, and who you're playing.
Yeah, certainly. My name is David. I use he, him pronouns. And I am playing Rory McClellan. Rory McClellan is in the Legacy playbook. He comes from a long line of monster hunters, primarily based up in Scotland, but he is currently down here working with Hargrave House. Excuse me. Yeah, so Rory is sort of scrappy looking, wiry more than bulky. Wears kind of often wears sort of Highland clothes, sort of a loose fitting shirt and kilt. Though will also wear more unobtrusive things to blend in, or bright coloured tweed suits if he's dressing up a little. I think last time Rory spent some time investigating the strange occurrences in Miswell Hill, including an odd experience down by one of the underground rivers of London. And yeah, I think that's broadly where I'm at with Rory. Yep.
Great. And finally, Ben, if you want to introduce yourself, your character, your pronouns, and who you're playing.
Hi, I'm Ben. He, him. I'm playing Kazoku, who's like a cat hive mind, and who lounges around Hargrave House. And Kazoku likes scritches behind the ears, warm milk, and walks along the rooftops. And about me, I like to play and write LARPs. And like just an update on my life. I've got this like what's called a planner that I've gotten really serious about, like addressing my ADHD or like something. I'm not sure. I just forget everything in my life all the time, and so it's just like thick, right? And like I even have like sections where I have like my bills and stuff like sectioned out for different things. That I'm just so happy about life right now. I'm back in Japan. That's it. I'm really excited to play with y'all today.
Ooh, great. As always, this game is hosted through The Gauntlet. The Gauntlet, for folks who don't know, is an online gaming community mostly focusing on role-playing games of the indie and OSR variety. Besides publishing a zine called The Codex, as well as putting out several podcasts about tabletop role-playing games. It also hosts a gaming calendar that this and many other games are hosted through. If you are interested in playing with any of the people here today or any of the other people on the Gauntlet, check it out through the link below, as the calendar is open to non-members. As always, we're going to be making use of the open door policy. If for whatever reason you are unable, you need to step away from the table, feel free to. Real life, it takes real life and your comfort takes priority over playing here at the table. If you could let us know if and when you're going to be back, that's helpful to us in terms of framing scenes. But sometimes emergencies happen, and that's not always possible. Besides the open door, we also make use of a couple other safety tools I'm not going to go into a huge detail about because we have gone over them before. Most of the people here are longtime Gauntlet members at this point. But we are making use of the X card. If for any reason you feel uncomfortable at the table and need to stop things, feel free to make an X card with your hands, type X in the chat, say X card. We'll ask what's being X carded, and then but then we will remove it from the fiction. Besides the X card, we're also making use of Lines and Veils, which is a living document we put together and check in back on regularly that asks us to pay specific attention to certain themes or issues that we want to pay particular attention to safety-wise. And then finally, we're making use of script change, which is a set of terms that we can use to help us talk about the fiction derived from video editing. But yeah, kind of jumping in on things. We were going to introduce the Coven, but our vessel couldn't be here today. So we'll instead introduce a new threat because the Coven can be introduced even if we have 3 threats in play. It is actually going to be Ben's, the Nutcracker. So let me just bring this up here and I'll just throw this out. So for the Nutcracker, a retired hunter, Rabbi Rebecca Solomon, has sent a letter to Hargrave House. She asks for assistance in cracking a case close to home. The bodies of 3 dancers from the Royal Ballet have been discovered encased in ice and posed as sculptures throughout the city. Basil Lagarde, 13, posed skating at Regent's Lake Park. Massimo Osani, 19, found praying at Solomon's own synagogue. And Hermes Visoring Lambros, 29, crucified outside St. Paul's Cathedral, St. Paul's Church. Each body has been gelded. The ballet's winter season threatens to be canceled, and Rabbi Salomon, a patron of the ballet, wants the so-called sculptor caught. She has determined the killer works at the theater, but she is forbidden to speak to staff due to previous recreational trespasses. So this is a question for all of you. The ballet is well known for its secrecy. What wild rumors have you heard about its approach to discipline? And I'll go around. Countess Annalise, what wild rumors have you heard about the ballet's approach to discipline?
Ballet members who transgress are locked in a small room in the basement without food or water for a day at a time.
I think it's rumored that the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the schedule, the living arrangements, the food, the drink, everything that the dancers do is highly regimented by the ballet company. You know, they're kind of it's almost like a military you know, barracks type situation where the comings and goings are very tightly controlled, when they eat, what they eat, when they have to attend their various duties in practice and performance.
I've heard that they have these truth sessions that where someone sits in the middle and then everyone around them speaks true about them, and then they have to answer like any question they pose truly, or else they'd be punished. And it is a form of hazing and bullying. So
Great, cool. And so I realized I forgot to do XP, so we'll get to that after I finish introducing the threat. But just so that folks know, there are 3 ways of there are 3 questions here, and each offers a way of resolving the threat. You can either find where the sculptor carves their works, and you can resolve a threat by laying a trap for the sculptor, then capturing or destroying them. You can find what winter the tradition the sculptor still enjoys, and then resolve the threat by celebrating the sculptor, luring them into the hands of the police. And finally, you can answer the question at complexity 8. How does the Royal Ballet train its featured dancers? In which case you can resolve the threat by empathizing with the sculptor and promising fresh materials. The threat is resolved, but the sculptor may be a future danger if the dance of the Nutcracker is ignored or left incomplete for too long. And the dance of the Nutcracker is a custom move I will introduce here. Unfortunately, seems like this particular PDF has decided to use all of its text as an image. So let's see if I can copy that image of this move and paste it in somewhere.
So that's the benefit from the 8.
What was that?
That's the benefit of the complexity 8.
Yeah. Basically, it's a series of things that have you engaging in some capturing and taking part in the sculptor's art. But I'll type that up further in a moment once I have some time, because I can, as I said, I can't copy the text here I'm finding. But yes, so that's the new mystery we're introducing today. So I want then to go around because I realize we haven't done XP since we're coming on the next dawn. Let's see if we could go, let's do reverse character keeper order this time. Kazoku, what were your questions? Or have you already taken care of your XP? I think most people have, it looks like.
I'll just assume I have.
I guess we all have them. Since erase my leftover checks. But we've had two unscenes, right? So we've had 2 opportunities for XP, it seems to me.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't think I've done mine.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
I don't think I've done mine either then, because I had some check marks that I made when they happened.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have either then, Kazuku, because I think you probably have more than 2 XP, right?
Okay.
Because I think you definitely performed a soliloquy contemplating your impending doom.
Yeah, I think so too. Did I learn in part the meaning of family? Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember.
I guess it depends. Like there was that whole like
There's a scene like set in like the neighbor's house,
yeah.
and so I learned that family's terrible, but like
that doesn't sound
You
like
also sent like one of your other selves to become like the pet cat of the child.
Oh, that's true. It's true. I think that might be, in some ways, family is like consolation when things are difficult, maybe. But I'm not sure if I've actually answered that question. I don't think I have. But I think I performed a soliloquy. Okay.
Yeah. And Rory, did you try to go unnoticed in a public space?
Sort of. I specifically made a point of trying to look as unobtrusive as possible.
It didn't
when...
necessarily work out, and you also did try to blend in by drinking the whiskey.
Yeah. I don't think I did taste anyone's blood, sweat, or other bodily fluids. Well, I mean, who knows with that gin, but
Yeah.
not intentionally. God, I was just noticing Kay's third dawn question. That seems so specific.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not did you make love to a dark entity, but did you do it because it felt good? It's like, no, it's supposed to for money, I guess.
Yeah. And then our undeniable. And I realize it's been 2 weeks because of our break. So if you can't if you think you did experience an echo in the night but can't remember what, feel free to mark an XP for that.
I had an echo in the night, and I expressed a clear preference for the beautiful.
Did you think you
And
showed a vulnerable side to Titania at all?
yeah, actually, I kind of did. I don't. I'd forgotten the conversation with Titania as a possible. It's like I didn't show it to anybody else here, but I did show it to Titania. Yeah, because I showed her, among other things, that I was sorry for her.
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is not something I had to do.
Cool.
Her having lost her kingdom, whereas I still had mine. Or so the conversation went.
Yeah, and there was the whole thing around the locket and the sharing of that about that.
Yes.
But cool. In that case, okay, I think that was the last of the kind of bookkeeping stuff to take care of. Did anybody level as a result of that?
I do, and I've picked another move.
Cool. What move did you pick? Just check.
I picked Giveth, of course.
Oh, that's the one that lets you declare side characters
As worshippers, and it also opens up the opportunity for a player character to debase themselves at my feet and become a worshipper and get an extra dawn question that's always marked. So, you know, feel free.
Great.
It also, I think it says something about the fact that Annalise seems even more like someone for whom worship is completely appropriate.
Great.
She's always had a little bit of that aura, and you've always noticed people tend to act that way, and it's even stronger now.
Yeah, in that case, let's open with what people are doing with their day phase, unless anybody has a move that triggers during the dawn. I don't think people do. Yeah, I don't think anyone does. Yeah, what I'm gonna go around then and ask Kazoku, what are you doing during your day phase?
Is the St. James Street ghost still
Yeah, that has not been
active?
resolved yet. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'll but we're so close to resolving. Did we answer the question of how ghosts can pass on to the next world?
No, we haven't answered that yet.
Wow. You know, I think
No.
it might be just interesting to let it fester and just keep going.
Well, I was pushing to try to get that to answer, but we haven't actually tried to answer it.
Yeah, and there is also a side opportunity in that one if people were willing to burn the clues for it, where you can gain the ability to commune with ghosts generally at any place.
I think that would be really beautiful for the Countess to have that custom move. It would fit with her.
It would fit with her, but on the other hand,
identity.
she gets enough opportunities to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to answer well either of those questions. Either the custom move one first, or go straight to the resolving. I don't have any immediate thoughts, I will confess, but I'm happy for us to go ahead with that if people want to.
Yeah, and remember, we can't resolve the threat until the night phase anyway. So
right, but we can answer the question.
Yeah. So sure, do people want to answer the question then?
I think so.
I think I'd like to let the threat fester a little bit more, and I would like to see how it changes the story, maybe with other threats or something, or poses as a danger. Because I've never seen the St. James ghost actually in its full glory outside of the house, or what it looks like. But if we want to do which part of the house is the ghost attached to, I have an idea.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And so there's windows cracked in the form of cobwebs. That's there's a theme of a spider. There's another with an animal, a glass tiger. So there's these things about glass, right? And animals. And so I'm thinking that it's in the nursery in the attic, right? Because there's different animals, and the glass means it's it's up. There's a fragility to the place.
There absolutely is. Well, and also the attic, which appears to be on fire.
Yeah, the attic appears to be on fire.
We also found a picture of the maid, another maid who had been frightened to death, and we know that the attic also used to be the maids' quarters before.
Ah,
I think.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah,
Remember, you can just declare things to be true during
that
this.
is also true. Yeah, yeah.
I think we never necessarily said that the attic used to be the maid's quarters, but you can totally like recall that, like, oh, right, I remember that being mentioned.
yes. I think that's great. That would give us a flat roll. How do we feel about that?
We can do a little better.
I think the strange entries in the ledger is like strange foods for the baby. That they're like very exotic things, like
Just
like yeah.
it doesn't even have to be exotic. Perhaps the child just had to be on was put on and very sickly. And was
Oh,
put on a special diet, and which
I
had
like.
to be foods foods that were mashed together,
I think it's very good. Wow.
just with special, just odd proportions of things like that, which if you read it would be like, this is a very odd, set of, vegetables and herbs and put together, but then thought of as medicine. Perhaps the doctors couldn't do anything and they brought in, someone who's a bit of an herbalist.
I think that's great.
Because the child wasn't gaining weight.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
So that would be a +1. Is that good enough?
Cool. So our answer here is the attic is where it's tied to.
Yes.
Cool. And let me just go over to threats here. Make sure we have them marked off. Cool. Yeah, so who wants to make this roll?
Countess, would you like to?
Certainly. Add some dice to the roll. So that's a 9.
Yeah, so on a 9 for when we are, let me just jump over to our moves here so I can read it specifics. On a 9, when we're using the answer a question, it's a correct solution and the opportunity can be pursued, but the keeper will add an unwelcome complication to the answer, and or pursuing the opportunity will be more dangerous. I think that what you discover is that whatever was being fed, like, actually, let me check in. This is going to be an ask first. Whatever was being fed to the child to strengthen it, it is tethered the baby to the ghost. That is the unwelcome complication here. And that in order to exercise the ghost for however you decide to pass it on, help it pass on, it is now connected to the child, and that will have to be dealt with as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Good.
But cool. I'm curious, what does So, like, I am curious, like, what does it look like as you are pursuing this sort of opportunity of learning how to channel the dead and speak to them?
I think I think we can make it very straightforward and thematic, which is that the Countess sits down with a pad and a piece of paper, and she clears her mind, and her hand begins to write. So it's automatic writing.
Cool. Is there anyone else? Is this in Hargrave House?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious, is this something you're doing in private, or is
No,
this
she's
something...
no. This is actually happening in the sitting room.
Oh, okay, cool.
Just occurs to her to take out a pencil and a pen at a moment. Then she looks pensive for a moment, and then she stares into the distance.
Mhm.
And her hand starts to write. She's not looking at the paper. Anyone would notice.
I'm wondering who is here. Is there anyone else here in the sitting room who would like
Anyone
to? Yeah.
Feel free.
Yeah. Is the sitting room the conservatory?
Do you want it to be the conservatory? It could be
I
the
think that would be
conservatory.
great.
Let's
I
have it be
think-
the conservatory then.
You know, I'm sitting, well, I'm lounging, near the sofa, where Countess Annalise is, and I'm sleeping, and I'm feeling someone like petting me and scratching me, right? And I hear like a whisper in the room, and I think that the Countess is speaking to me, but I look up, and it's not the Countess. It is someone who's, at least I think it's someone, almost like a silhouette in a very vague way, like who reminds me of the Reaver, um, like who appeared in the papers. The Jack the Ripper like character, their ghost is petting me at this moment, and then just like that, I I look again because I didn't register like that it was them in the first place, and then they're suddenly gone.
Mhm. Give me, Countess Annalise. Let's see. Give me a information move here with sensitivity.
All right.
Is there anything in your personal quarters you wanted to mark here?
Yes. I think I think what I'm using is what I have what's being used as a de facto writing surface is in fact the old King James Bible that has love notes to me. So we'll roll with the bench.
Cool. In that case, give me a roll with advantage. And I keep forgetting to mention this, but of course, if anyone wants to change their dawn moot questions, they're free to. I forgot to bring that up during the dawn phase.
I rolled a 7. However,
Mhm.
I am going to go ahead and mark the cosmic passage because that just seems appropriate to do when acquiring this move.
Yeah.
So I am seeing I'm seeing with other eyes right now. So that will push it to a 10.
Mm-hmm. I think that as you're writing, I think that you like, it's almost like you're filled with the will to hurt of somebody else. And your right and your like strokes go deeper and deeper until they're actually scoring lines through the paper. And I think, yes, scoring lines through the paper into the wood of the side table itself. And I think it is, if we're going with this figure of the Reaver, there is this, the lines are going over of slash them, hurt them, cut them open. And they start to get more and more illegible as you're digging further and further in. And I think that as it's almost, the lines are just becoming too, like your pen is almost beginning to ache in your hand. I think that a vase that maybe Kazoku is sitting near just shatters open, and a spray of blood pulls out onto the floor. Maybe even some gets into Kazoku's fur, if that's okay. And then the presence is gone. So you do get a clue here. It is a porcelain vase filled with warm, fresh blood. Kazoku, what do you do here? The Countess went into this trance, and then this vase that you were sunning besides just burst apart.
I mean, this is an atrocity.
I'm here, sweetheart. Says the Countess, coming to her senses and fishing out a handkerchief.
Yeah, I think, you know, if we would like it to be, we could make this a vulnerable move.
I do. Yes.
And I don't think that Kazuko has really shown how fearful they are in, like, it's just like in a very direct way to you in the same way before. And it's really quite shocked. And they scamper.
Yes.
They're frozen, and they look at you with these wide eyes.
I'm here, sweetheart.
They do.
I'm here. I'm here. Oh, look at you. You're a mess. I'll take care of that. All right. It's all right. I dabbed the blood off of you and stroked you with my other hand. The touch of my skin is cool. And soothing. Dark. It's all right. It's just a little stain. It'll be right as rain in just a moment.
And
Poor dear kitty, I see. To have such things happen to them. You're not meant to be in a world filled with such awful things.
Countess, why do the dead stay here?
John is here because he refuses to let go. He is a terrible and tormented soul, she says, and as she glances over to where the sitting table has been scored with the nib of the pen. Some of them stay. They're the saddest, the ones who won't go. Because it's very hard to make them go. Then there are the ones who are lost, who want to go, but who something of the circumstance of their death confused them, or they were too attached to something in life. And by the time they learned to detach, they couldn't figure out how to leave anymore. They're less sad because if you find them, you can help them on if you know how to do it.
Is that why you're still here, Countess? Are you a lost one, or are you one who refuses to go?
I'm not a ghost, dear. I'm solid as you are.
Well,
I'm
you remind me of me.
well, of course that's not surprising, I guess. You see something that no one sees, which is how much I have to do with death. Everyone else sees just how much I have to do with life. And I've just dealt with so many ghosts. And so many of the dead who are not ghosts, but who could have been ghosts. Everyone who, some of the people who died, most of them could find their way. But a surprising number of them need help. They are unsure or they are afraid. And that's the reason it's my part of my job. And that's the reason I've been here for so long. As I don't expect that people will stop needing that anytime soon. But people are afraid of the dark. You know, they're afraid of what they cannot know and cannot see. And sometimes that fear makes them become lost, or it terrifies them into foolish actions, or it twists them if it can go on long enough. So
Countess,
you don't have to be afraid of me, dear one. I'm your friend, and I will be every time you need me.
Countess, I'm not afraid of you. I know many people are, but
No, you shouldn't be, because you're going to need me over and over again, aren't you?
I think I'm going to need you in the end. I'm glad I'm here, but unlike you, I'm evanescent. I'm ephemeral. I'm gonna only be here so long. And looking in your eyes, I see a lodestone, an anchor, something that supports this house that we're in, this family that we're in. And I don't want you to ever go away.
Well, I can't say that I will always be here in Hargrave House. I'm here now, and I will be for a time and probably longer than your time. But I have to be a lot of places. And soon I will, at one point when it's right, I will go. But right now, right now, people need me here. And so I'm here. That's the, that is the only, not the only, but it is a major effect of having situations such as I do. Is you don't get to pick and choose where you practice. Not like a doctor or a barrister who might choose to up sticks and move to another city. I have to come where I'm called to a greater or lesser degree. So
I think that's when the camera, moves from our close interaction, and it slides down below the conservatory to where the laboratory is, with the many bodies inside, and we hear whispers between them as their ghosts are more active. And that's when, off screen, perhaps, Kazoku opens up about what he found down there.
And I'm wondering, both of you get to clear a condition first off, just mechanically here. I think this is your vulnerability move, right, Kazoku?
Yes.
How do you want to? What option do you want to take? You can either stumble upon a clue, or find or be able to invite the other player to ask you a question.
Invite the other player. I'm gonna ask for a clue.
Sure. And for this, you get to describe what the clue is for any of our existing threats.
Oh my gosh.
It just can't actually answer the question outright, but it can definitely point in a direction of that you are interested in the answer being.
Yeah, I think for the Nutcracker, the clue will be an actual angel feather.
Okay. It's because I maybe played one in your game, Ben. How is it that you find this actual angel feather?
Yeah, I think Kazoku is not one to go to churches, perhaps, but
I have
Countess, I think
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, please. I mean, I was imagining perhaps you find it later.
No, I think you find it right there. When you look up at the sitting desk, the nib pen that the Countess has laid down has turned into a quill.
Great.
Just sometime during that conversation, it just happened, and neither of us noticed until after. The Countess picks it up and looks at it with genuine astonishment.
Yeah,
Um,
I was imagining David like that Rory was like while this is happening, Rory's doing some epic like very legacy things in one of the other uh threats, but I'm not sure. I'm very excited to see what's
yeah,
happening.
I am curious because I was actually looking at the threats, and besides our new one, the miasma of Miswell Hill, we still need to answer like the first question before we can get on to the actual resolution questions. Which is the miasma generated by human hands, or is it something non-human at work? But I'll leave it up to you, David. What is Rory? What are you getting up to during the day phase?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think
I should also
I,
note that this time of like we're like I imagine in London, we are entering winter. We are starting to see snowfall and there's a chill in the air.
yeah, I think I'd actually like to frame up a vulnerable scene with Kazoku. I think if that's okay, Ben.
Oh,
Sure.
really? That
I
would
know
be
you've just been
great.
in one, but yeah.
What's your vice, Rory?
My vice is sex with strangers.
Oh, that's
So
excellent. I could be voyeur.
exactly, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Um, so I think we kind of cut over to um, Rory's bedroom. He is I think lying in some very in disarrayed sheets um, with another man, quite quite burly looking, probably some sort of labourer of some variety, um, and I think we kind of see. We see Rory kind of kissing and sucking down his body, and I'll veil exactly what goes in there. But I think as he's as they're done, he kind of will give kind of get out of bed and toss the man's sort of clothes back over to him,
Yeah. And
and
like we communicate like in a psychic way. It's not like a cat is actually talking. So it's
yeah,
like you
yeah,
can like we can have him in the room. That's great.
yeah.
Right.
And yeah, he sort of tosses the clothes over and sort of says, "All right, now, lad. Thank you for that. I needed a little distraction. You get on your way now. Do stop in at the kitchen and help yourself to something for breakfast." Um,
Yeah, he gives you a smile. If you ever looking for a bit of fun again, you know where to find me. And I think he even on walking out the door, like gives Kazoku like a little ruffle between the ears.
Yeah. I think Kazoku will like bite him. Um and like at first he's like Kazuki is very like okay with it, right? And it's like it's fine with the scritching, but then at like it just like at a certain point just like it scratches the man. Um and um I think
Ah,
that's how it would
take
happen.
something after your master, I see. And he goes out the door.
and I think Rory will kind of just sit on the edge of the bed and kind of turn towards Kazoku. And I think he does actually talk out loud to Kazoku because I think he just feels
Yeah.
generally finds that more comfortable.
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely
um, and this says, "Ah, enjoy the show, did you, little one?"
I always enjoy watching humans um be animals. Uh, getting in touch with your base nature. And Rory, I know that you, more than perhaps anyone in this house, are very in touch with your needs and desires. It's fascinating.
You could well say that. I do find I have to be on my best behavior here a little more than I would normally. And he kind of grins. It's I'd prefer to be doing something that gets my blood pumping, whether that be a good fuck or a good fight. He'll kind of shrug. I mean, I know there's always a danger in going too far with anything, but I think he'll kind of head over and find like a bit of a dried sausage or something. That's I think there, and he'll kind of tear a piece off and throw it down for Kazoku.
Yeah, so we're in your room still, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're happy to, it's very nice. I always admire how you're such a hunter. As I often go on hunts myself, whether here or elsewhere. And I thought I'd bring you one of my fresh kills. I'm very proud. Um, uh, I left it under your bed. Um, I
And
wonder, yeah.
yeah, and I think Rory will kind of crouch down and pull out what's been left
Yeah,
under there.
what has been left? What do you think you find?
I think it's a pigeon, quite a plump pigeon.
Rory, I think I'm having a discussion about fear with the Countess right now, but in the other room, but I am a bit afraid what we're coming up against, who we're hunting, they're not easy prey. Do you have any advice for me on how to stay the hunter and not the hunted?
I know what you mean, little one. That's he'll kind of gesticulate. The ghosts and spirits and all that thing aren't where my own talents lie particularly. I mean, I've put down a fair few of them, don't get me wrong, but I prefer something I can and I think he kind of glances down at the pigeon in his hand and says, "There's something I can sink my teeth into, much like yourself, Kazoku." But I think the most important thing when they're dealing with something as unpredictable as the sort of creatures we're after is to always stay on your guard, and I don't think you have anything to worry about when it comes to that. You seem to have quite the set of senses on you.
Is staying on your guard how you do with all of your quarry? And I gesture my head toward the gentleman who just left the premises.
Sometimes it pays to keep a bit of distance between you and them. Letting them get too close can be dangerous, but at the same time, letting your guard down a little bit is all part of the fun in that case.
I think that might be when the scene ends, right?
Yeah,
I think Kazoku will like curl up beside you or whatever. I'd like to ask.
Before we end the scene,
please.
Rory, you get the choice here. Do you want to stumble upon a clue? Because you both clear one condition if you can.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, I should say. Except Kazoku, you cannot clear your most beloved. You're just the loved cat. But Rory, do you want to invite Kazoku to ask you a question, or do you want to stumble upon a clue?
I think I'm going to stumble on a clue. Actually, I think as we kind of see, I think Rory kind of stands up and says, "Well, come now, I'll get this plucked and cleaned, and I'll cook that for breakfast, and you can have the innards." And as he does so, he also goes over to his table where there's kind of an empty bottle of whiskey and a couple of glasses sat next to him. He kind of picks the glasses up to take down as well. And I think we see on like his desk, there's a
Do not give the cat whiskey.
I think on the desk we see a fairly crudely drawn but accurate map of the like sewers and underground rivers around Miswell Hill that was clearly drawn by the gentleman caller the night before.
Cool. Yeah, so we can go ahead and add that to our clues for that threat. Okay, I see somebody, it looks like somebody's adding it. In that case, I think if it's cool for folks, I think it might be good to transition into our dusk phase so that we can kind of get to the night phase and actually wrap up on time. If that works for folks. Yeah, I think that
So we haven't answered any questions, have we?
we
In
have
terms
answered
of
a question.
threats.
We answered a question,
Oh,
but
we
we
did
can't
answer a
resolve
question,
a threat.
Right.
Yeah. But we can answer a question now because we're going to the dusk phase. So that's part of it.
Yeah, we could. We could try. I mean, we'd be rolling at what, -3, I think, for if we want to resolve the St. James Ghost.
Well, Miswell Hill is flat, and then of course there are mastermind clues.
Well, Miswell Hill is flat, but you actually need to answer the first question first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sorry,
so,
I hadn't finished filling out. I should actually update that.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, unlock the next appropriate question. Yeah, that's so it's you have to determine if it's human or non-human first, and that's a complexity 2 question.
It probably makes sense to answer the first question for Miswell Hill now anyway, because it gives us something to focus on, even if we can't
Sure.
Can't answer the can't resolve it.
Yeah, we get something to investigate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we've got a notebook detailing inhumane experiments.
Yeah.
And pagan worship of the river deity, which of course may be the same, may be talking about the same thing, right? If these inhumane experiments are actually ritual sacrifices and not experiments at all.
Yeah, I definitely think it's I'm getting more of the non-human vibe from this.
I think so.
Or possibly possibly involving humans, but supernatural rather than scientific, if that makes sense.
Yes, I agree. I think I think it makes sense that it would be a supernatural thing, that because all the references to the river deity and such like that, and however many we choose to use, makes it seem like someone called up a thing from the river for their own, but perhaps for the sake of knowledge, and it has gotten out of hand. So a person had probably almost certainly had was involved in bringing this thing about, but it is the miasma itself is not generated by human hands.
Yeah.
So the
I think, yeah, and I think maybe I think maybe the pieces of the cassock that we found from the river.
There we go.
I think that is maybe a sign that that the Reverend was on the right track, and that's why he was killed.
Absolutely. And the question is, do we include the maps of the sewers and rivers?
I
Which
want to
think-
save it
Yeah, we could save that, I guess, actually, yeah, because that might help more towards the
because it's the next
nature.
one is 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complete 6.
Fair enough.
And also I always like these the kind of
Vague ones.
yes or no ones, because if we fail we can just take the other answer, as it were, and but yeah, no, that sounds good.
But what if there are more than 2 answers? You just don't know what they are. Okay.
So yeah, Mr. McClellan, would you like to take this
Sure
role for
thing.
us? The +1, I think.
Yeah. And that is a 5.
Okay, so the question is then, do you want to, does everybody want to mark a mask in order to bump this up to a weak hit, or do we want to take that miss and see what happens of it?
I'd
Right,
like to
because
take it.
the miss doesn't necessarily mean that the other answer is true, right? It just means
I think
It
for yes
does,
or
I
no,
think.
it does.
oh, it does. Oh,
Because
okay.
this is one of those, like, you are going with one of, like, there are 2 answers here, like there's specifically this or this, and
Right,
so
right. I suppose so, but I was wondering if it might be true that you don't give an answer, or is that not? I don't know how the move works.
no, I think
Excuse
in
me.
this case, this is like in this particular sort of question, we move on to the next stage, but basically it's now decided that it's man-made.
The answer is
but-
incorrect,
Yeah,
but the keeper reacts, which means something terrible
yes,
happened.
exactly.
I'm happy to do either.
Same. I'm good either way.
I mean, most of you haven't used that many masks yet, and there's still the mask associated with this
Oh yes,
threat that hasn't been used.
Mask of River's Rage, although it doesn't have a
Oh,
description.
let me pop that in. I forgot to do it for this. Let me.
Yeah. All right.
On the other hand, maybe we should take heart from the name of this place, and
Yeah.
which argues that a miss would go well.
Miss Wild Hill.
I
I'm
love English place names better than anything in the world. Because they are redolent
I'm
with
playing
history,
Market
even
Masks.
when they're completely forgotten. The origins of them are completely forgotten. They sound pregnant with meaning.
I'd like to mark a mask. Actually,
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I'm
what
good
is
to
the
go.
Mask of River's Rage? We were going to find that out.
Yeah, I'm just sorry about this.
Yeah, no worries.
Here we go. The Mask of River's Rage, narrated unseen along the banks of the River Thames and its tributaries, from the perspective of the river. Ask the players which act of wanton despoilment enrages them. The mask wearer experiences the scene as a dream or vision. So it's a slightly weird one. It's
Cool.
like not going into your memories or your personal experiences. Everybody else basically is narrating a vision for the person that puts it on.
Right, and so one person could take that.
Yeah.
As their mask.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I heard that Kazoku, you're volunteering to put on a mask.
yeah, I'd like to put on
I
the
guess we all will
Cosmic
in order
Passage.
Yeah.
Cool.
to. Already, dear. I'm so sorry.
I think I might mark the mask mark the mask for the threat, if that's okay. The Mask of River's Rage, because that sounds quite fun.
Sure.
By all means. And then let me see what I can mark. I'll mark a mask of the past, I think.
Cool. So let's go through this then. Let's handle your, if you have a thought. Well, first off, Kazoku, what is the mechanical effect? Is there anything we need to resolve right now for your cosmic passage?
No, it is just a narration, so I can do that later if you like.
I mean, I think I'm fine doing it now if that works for folks.
Yeah, so the cosmic passage is narrate yourself forgetting who you are, momentarily becoming feral. And so I'll do that, and then I will ask the table who helps me return to lucidity. And now I can communicate with all side characters telepathically and not just the hunters and Hargrave House. So I think we see, and maybe it's today or as recently, or maybe it's related to the catching of the pigeon, but there's like something that, like the scent of the hill, the Niswell Hill, is starting to like when I went by there's something about it that like really got into my senses. And I went into a kind of perspective that only cats really can have, where everything's in sharp detail. And it's even more so than normal because I think all of my identities just separated from each other. And in the strangest way, like a horrible loneliness. I was suddenly alone in the world, and I had to fend for myself. And so the camera sees it, like it splits into, 8 different perspectives, like all these different felines. And one of them is a large, I think it's a lion in London Zoo. And we see like a large title called, it says Big Tooth, and it's scarred, and it has like a bloodlust in its eyes, and it has been banging against bars day after day, and today it like shatters through the barricade and escapes into London. And we just get a flash of red, and like different pictures of different types of animals, and even those, certain individuals walking the streets. They see just animals of all sorts, large and small, being ripped apart. We see Kane, this big chunky cat, pumpkin-shaped Nibelung, like in the kitchen, like going through all the cupboards and like finding all of the the treats, and going through Rory's dried like it's his like his kills, right? And like cutting them down and like hoarding them and nibbling through. So we get this kind of panorama. So who would like to help me? Who does? Just in the end, we don't have to really narrate it, I guess, but who helps me return to lucidity?
I do, of course.
Thank you. What do you
Yeah.
do?
I sing to you. You hear my voice. I'm singing the sweet little mournful tune that it carries somehow into where you are, and you can follow it if you listen closely. And you follow it, all the way through. And then just when you come to where you are is when you wake up.
Thank you. That's
Puss
so nice.
puss, I say. I say, not yet. Not yet, dear one. Don't be wary where you go. Some doors are harder to open, to go back through than they are to go through the first way.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. And Countess Annalise, what is your mask have you marked?
My mask is one of the masks of the past, and its text is narrate a flashback to your childhood that shows even then people were willing to suffer in order to make you happy. Exactly what the Countess's childhood was is up for debate, but this is the flashback. That we see the Countess as a girl. She's in a somewhat well-to-do household. She has a croquet set. She's not playing on a croquet lawn, but she's just thumping the ball around in the grass in the way that children do. She's a fairly a child of perhaps 8 or so, so she's just whacking the ball. Her dog is running around, barking. Occasionally, taking a nip at the ball as it goes by, and she chides it. And there are other children in the vicinity. And at one point, she gives the ball a great whack, and it goes straight off of the grassy area and into a thicket of thorn bushes, which is growing by the side of a stream. And she walks up to it in her perfectly lovely dress, and she peers in there, and she frowns, and she starts to cry. And a boy her age or slightly older comes, and she says, "What's the matter?" He says, "What's the matter?" And she points and blubbers something about the ball, and without a hesitation, he goes right into the bush. And you hear thrashing about, and he finally comes out with the ball. His clothes are in tatters. The thorns have scored his limbs. He's bleeding from a dozen significant scratches, on his face and his hands and arms in particular. But he looks positively delighted with himself as he hands the ball over to her, and she takes it, and she gives him the most angelic smile that you can imagine a child do.
Cool. And Rory, I think we'll seg into your mask in a moment, because I think it will be a good seg into the night phase. But I wanted to open then our dusk with our description of do I have it? Our room for Hargrave House. Oh, here we go. Sorry about this. Here we go. Yeah, I think this is one that will be a form we'll open on the music room. A former hunter in residence once used this room to wrangle a spirit using the power of music. There are still subtle signs of the struggle in this room. What are they? And we'll go to you first, Kazoku, and then we'll go backwards across the character keeper.
Yeah, I think that the hunter who wrangled a spirit, wrangled them in part with with a very novel invention, a what is called those tables, turntables, but in the 18th century.
Phonograph?
A phonograph. The 19th century, yeah, phonograph. And that when you play the phonograph, it actually has like the last like you can hear the spirit speak out to you. But it's in a kind of gargled backwards fashion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rory, what other sign is there in the music room of this struggle?
Along one wall, sort of in the wood paneling, there are scratch marks, kind of in a sort of succession, still marking the wood. But if you play the like the top part of each scratch mark, it actually plays out a little tune in musical notation.
That's excellent. Oh my gosh.
I like that.
Great. And Countess Annalise, what is another sign of the struggle that once took place in this room?
I think the several of the window panes. There's a many paned window. I think a round window up in the eave of the room peaks as a peak, and there's a round window there that had stained glass in it, and the glass is a number of the panels of glass there have cracked, but yet not being replaced. And when at a certain time of day, which corresponds to the time when the struggle took place, you can see quite plainly the figure of a young woman projected in light across one thing made by the stained glass itself and the strange spidery pattern of cracks that has appeared. And that's the reason that those panels were never put back.
Great. So, to wrap up our dusk phase, I want to check in with each of you. What are you planning on doing this night phase? We'll go left to right this time. Countess Annalise, what are you planning on doing this night phase?
We've done enough with the ghost, I think, for now. I'll let someone else. I can't hog the ghost all to myself. and it is Christmas time is coming. So I'm going to get dressed up in my winter finest, which includes this beautiful ensemble of white fur ensemble with red, blue, and red accents. and this lovely hat. I'm going to go ice skating on the big rink in the plaza in front of the Royal Ballet. And there I'm going to talk to people and ask about these strange statues and what everyone thinks of them.
Great. Yeah, and Rory, what are you getting up to this ninth phase?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, what I will do, because I've got my cosmic passage thing that I need to do, so I'll roll that and see how that goes, I think, before I make any decisions.
Did we all mark the cosmic passage?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
really?
you need the
Wow.
you need the cosmic passage to. I mean, to be fair, two of the character, all of you have like really like useful cosmic passages, which is why
Yes.
everyone has it marked.
Well, and even and the vessel does too.
Well,
Okay,
to use
everything.
old bones, you need the cosmic passage marked.
It's
so.
true. Well, that's the reason I did it. But,
Cool. So I got an 8, which I think means, yeah, I get advantage on my next roll that I do. But I have the condition bloodthirsty, so I think that that being the case, ooh, sorry, I'm just reminding myself of. Yeah, I think I'm going to. I think I'm going to go back to Miswell Hill actually, and I think I'm going to go specifically, kind of again looking around some of the underground rivers and the like, because that feels like the most concrete thing I can do at the minute. I think that's definitely what that bloodthirsty is angling me towards.
Great. And Kazoku, what are you doing this ninth phase?
Yeah, Kazoku is going to well, there's a rumor about that in the basement of the Royal Ballet. There's a room where they punish or discipline dancers, and I think I'm going to see if that rumor is true. I would like to go below the ballet.
Cool. So, to open our night phase, then I'm going to just ask us to all just jump over to the unseen. And if folks could take a look at actually just the very first one, A Night at the Grand Guignol, The Baker's Son. Every class of people in London is represented in the audience at the Theatre Grand Guignol. They have come to watch the newest production, The Baker's Son, a story filled with romance, heartbreak, and buckets full of blood. Or bucketfuls of blood. So
it's full too.
Yeah. So the first question is a paint the scene. So I'm going to pose this to each of you. As the limelights pop to life and the crimson curtain is raised, what do we see as our eyes scan the stage that tells us this is the story of a humble baker's son? I'll go. We'll call out Rory first this time. Rory, what do we see as our eyes scan the stage? It tells us this is the story of a humble baker's son.
I think there is, a big prop of a baker's oven on the stage, and it has kind of, a kind of flame device, so it looks like there's actually a fire burning in there. It's probably just, some like gas jets or whatever up at the front of it, but yeah.
Cool. And Kazoku, what else tells us is the story of a humble baker's son?
Yeah, we see the overbearing mother of the son has a very large rolling pin that she just keeps beating dough with, like, again and again, and that's how the play starts. And he's there, like, the baker's son is doing like a hollow bread there, and just like cringing every time his mother's it's like a dowel. I'm not sure how to describe it. The rolling pin slams into the table. Thank you, Countess.
You got it right first time. And let me see, what can I add to that? We see the cart is there just inside the door, where that is where they some breads have already been put, and it's cleanly seen better days. It's an old thing, and the wood is stained, and there's a crudely lettered sign, saying fresh bread. There. It's just a little two-wheel thing with handles to trundle down the way. Kind of the least the humblest means of hawking these wares that they do. Also, it occurs to me that this is the humble baker's son. That also this is the bakery here is also their apartment. In other words, that there's a bed shoved in the corner, and a mean little cupboard and things like that. They're not wealthy enough to actually have a bakery by itself. It's just a baker's oven that's being it's right in their living space, or that they live right there in the bakery. And since they hawk their wares hawk the bread on the street, and they don't have any need of a separate establishment. It's good because they can't afford it.
Great. In that case, the last thing we'll do to kind of open this night phase, Rory, why don't you narrate the opening for that mask that you put on, and then we'll ask each of the other players to elaborate upon it, as it says there. The Mask of the River's Rage.
So I think we see I think that we see as it comes up to the end of the day, we see Billingsgate Fish Market, and there are buckets and buckets of fish that haven't been sold in the market and are starting to go off, starting to rot, and they're just being hurled back into the river, and we just see this like little tide of dead fish floating out on the river currents. Great.
And the question that we pose to the other characters is, let me just unmark this for a moment. Which act of wanton despoilment enrages them? And this is from the river's perspective.
This is from like passers-by above? Or...
No, this is from the perspective of the river itself, that we are elaborating on this narrative of the despoilment of the river. That this is being told from the perspective of the river, effectively.
So I'm going to say that and it is the actual river. So what I'm going to say is that there is a collier's barge, a coal carrier, that has offloaded its coal, and it just has a deck full of clinker, which is the unburnable bits of rock and such that were left over from the coal that we got pulled out of the mine, but which are unsaleable. And they the barge just they let down a side of there, and the clinker is just swept off of the deck of the barge straight into the river. And it's essentially it's filth, industrial waste.
Great.
Yeah, I think we see a number of passersby just like laughing and pissing into the waters below, like standing at the edge of a bridge, which like as almost as like a dare. It's a true pissing contest, and it's somewhat dangerous because the thick railing is covered in frost, and the water just steams coming up from below.
Great. Awesome. Rory, as your vision clears and the scent of dead and decaying fish still fills your nostrils, you're standing on the banks of one of the sewer tributaries. Let me just see here. What's his name? Mr. Reimer, the rider that you had met before, is bloody and beaten before you. He looks up at you and says, "Such claws, such fangs, such dreadful bearing." He looks maddened in the eyes. Did you beat him? You can't really recall. In fact, you can't really recall getting here except that you had set out earlier this night. But you can smell an acrid burning scent in your nostrils. And each breath you take in seems to cloud your memory of the night even more. Or what do you do? Also, are you okay with me having that uncertainty about whether or not you did?
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, and I think Rory is going to kind of look away from the man on the floor, and kind of start just scanning the area around him. And I think he's going to kind of press on forwards and just start stalking down the bank of the river, and sort of follow its course. Very obviously like on edge and alert, but yeah, sort of echoing the conversation with Kazoku earlier, very much kind of running on instinct at this point rather than thinking things through, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely think you are still burnt by the river. I think that you already, this is all reminiscent of that burn is reminiscent of that awful gin that you've had to have that you had drunk the last time you were here in Miswell Hill. And I think that you're probably, as you're pressing forward, I'm curious, what are you afraid is going to happen here?
I think I'm afraid that um, I'm going to get lost in this miasma, and yeah, I think that's what I'm afraid of happening here.
I mean, it's worse than that, because it's not that you will become lost. It's that you're going to be led exactly where whatever is behind this mist wants you to go. Do you push ahead?
I am. Yep, I am.
Cool. And I think you are burnt. This would probably be, I'm assuming, with composure. It could be with vitality, I suppose, depending on how you think Rory is pushing up ahead.
I think probably more vitality at
Okay.
the moment, because I think it's yeah, like I said, more instinctual than controlled.
Yeah, you're still burnt, but fortunately you have that take advantage. So I think the two cancel each other out. But tell us how channeling the beast is helping you here.
Yeah, I think that even though there's that horrible acrid scent in the air, I think Rory is able to push through that, and he can smell other things as well, kind of the natural scent of the river, the kind of the mud and stuff around them. Not all pleasant smells either, but I think it's enough that he can kind of almost start to filter out that scent, that acrid scent of the miasma.
Yeah, give me a roll with vitality.
That's a 6.
Okay,
Nice.
so I think that what happens is we see you pressing on into the mist until finally you break through to a basement filled with bodies in tubs, all lined up, bubbling and dissolving away. And I think it's then that, like, that burning, it gets worse and worse. And I think the last moment we see of Rory McClellan is as the miasma burns away at your skin, and we see the flesh bubble from bone as you collapse to the floor, having made this discovery. Would you like to mark a mask?
I think I will. I'm going to mark another mask of the past.
Cool. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's shift over to our Countess. Annalise, on Regent's Park Lake, which is one of the big skating rinks of the city, long arcing bridges span wide waters, and willow limbs laced with frost gleam as young lovers take their first tentative steps together under the boughs. There's also a small winter market here where warm sweets are available for purchase. Despite this picturesque visage, Regent's Park Lake saw a tragedy last year when the ice gave way and 500 figures plunged into the freezing depths. What evidence of the rescue efforts still linger?
I would say this is when the bridge gave way. that there's enormous
when the ice gave way.
when the ice gave way
Mhm.
and people plunged in. Um, so I would say, let me think here. This would have been something that happened very rapidly. Most people would have died straight away. But there are horses' hoof marks in the frozen earth on the banks of the lakes in one place, in an area that's essentially scraped clear of visage, because where a team of horses was harnessed up, where a pair of horses were harnessed up in great dispatch to pull a number of people out of the frozen water. It had been where rescuers had got ropes to them but couldn't get them out. Their clothes being sodden with frigid water, and so a couple of cart horses were dragooned over by an enterprising person, and the marks of the marks made by the horse in the cart and such like that are still there to be seen, in the place where the decorative hedges were planted, which have not been replaced yet.
I think as you are skating here, cracked a kind of cracked aged voice draws like with a bit of like a lisp of like missing teeth. Very grateful, miss. Almost as graceful as good Queen Mab, one could say.
I would never commit lèse-majesté by comparing myself to a sovereign, but you are very kind to do so.
Yes, and I think like when you respond, you see it is this old beggar woman. She has a wreath almost set as a crown on her head, and she has a nutcracker just clutched in her hands that she occasionally gives a rap on. No part into any majesty. I did say almost. All of Queen Mab is always the most graceful, and if there's someone more so than her, she could always steal away their feet, I suppose.
As nobility, I have learned to be very careful of the prerogatives of royalty, even those of a different court than mine, good dame, and your obviously your wisdom, of the wisdom of one who seems to bear the frame of your years. Although I do admire your crown. It is how suitable.
I got it when I became the Snow Queen, and she preens and pats it proudly.
You must have been, you must have stolen the hearts of gentlemen to your right and left in your day, madame, and for I suspect you might still be able to do so.
Oh, miss, and
yourself.
she gives you a wink. I stole their lives, not their hearts.
Well, one is of necessity the beginning of the other. Are they so unlinked one with another? And I give her a bow. Your Majesty.
Oh, of course. And she like lifts up her tattered skirt in a little bit of a curtsy, as if from one member of the nobility to another. What brings such a illustrious member as you to our city? One does not often see nobility dancing on puppet strings.
I hope at least that I can see my own strings. Beldame, I say, waving my arms in a picturesque fashion. But I am much concerned about a sadness that has happened here and around here. The figures of I don't have the summary. The figures found frozen in ice that left in points around the city, even at the foot of my beloved St. Paul's. So unhappy to think that we have such a unquiet or unkind soul, that they must commit such depredations. And I would understand the mind of such better by trying to understand their motive.
But all knowledge has a cost, miss. And mine would be that beautiful locket you wear upon your breast. And she points at the locket of the of the heart that you wear, if you recall. And I'll shift the scene from you for a moment as you ponder whether or not you want to give that up for a clue from her or for information from her. And let me see here. Kazoku. As you are, why don't you describe him? Because I don't think and like to hard frame it here. How have you snuck your way into the underground of the theater to look for this secret room?
That's a really great question. I think that there there's a basement window, I imagine, that peeks into an alley beside the street below, the street, and I think that a Canadian lynx with 3 feet kind of slipped its way through.
Mm-hmm. What was the last meal you had?
Oh, it was this amazing, the innards of a pigeon.
Mm-hmm.
And it had this taste of cumin, and it was fabulous.
And what about walking through the underground passages of this theater is reminiscent of being devoured now?
Oh, I think that everything's wet. That there's something about surprisingly either warm here, or there's something that has to do with like the heat differential. But the walls in the basement are are slick uh and brim with water droplets.
Mm-hmm. And as you come to the end of a passage, there is, I think your eyes catch upon it, and maybe even first your nose. You catch the scent of old blood and, well, to put it frankly, of shit and piss, where people were of it smells like where people were held for long periods of time without being let out. And there is at the end this door slightly ajar that you can see has barred. It looks definitely, if for I don't know how familiar Kazoku would be with these. It looks like the door of a prison cell. It has a slot for letting food in and out. It has a small window that could be opened from the jailer's side, but it is open now. And there's an eerie silence over the place as you peer into it.
Yeah, I enter.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we are actually hitting on perhaps one of our new moves here, if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Because I think that you are touch listening to or otherwise attuning to a building's architectural details here.
Mm,
Could you give me a roll of sensitivity?
yeah. What is my sensitivity? My sensitivity is two.
It's your best step.
Oh,
Didn't even know that.
2d6.
Do you have anything in your personal quarters you'd like to mark?
Oh, I would like to mark. What do I have? Yeah, I think what I'd like to mark is a broken grandfather clock, clawed and haunted by my dead siblings. Um, and the way it does that is because I often talk to my dead siblings, or at least like I spend time with them on the clock. Um, and that has uh it's it gives me heart that I'm not dealing with something entirely alien. Um, yeah, that if I'm going to
Cool.
deal with spirit here, it's not going to be totally unknown to me.
So cool. Give me a 3d6 and keep your highest 2.
Oh, I have a 2, 5, and a 2, so that's a 9 total.
Cool. So for this move on it's now in our threat, it's under threat moves, old bones. On a hit, a ghost will appear and answer a single question you pose to it or perform a small task your choice. Any answers it gives can be in the form of a clue at the keeper's discretion. And this is something that happens on a 10 plus. The ghost will not ask for anything in return, which means it will ask for something in return now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as we are opening, as we peer and you're attuning, I think you begin to scent the smell of someone that died in this cell. And I think he still looks, as you begin to see him, he is maybe perhaps only 18, 19, but he looks like someone that was locked down here for weeks and just left to drain away. He looks like an underfed rat that you would not be even bother hunting and killing, so little meat would be on his bones. And he looks at you, Cat, and he says, I see what you are. And let's shift to our unseen. David, describe Act 1, in which the baker's son, a young man named Daniel, falls in love with a woman, Dahlia, who he cannot have.
Yeah, I think we see this young I think she's dressed in classic maid garb, the black dress and the starched white pinafore, and she comes in every morning to get fresh bread to take back home to her employer's house. And I think we see kind of the we see Daniel speaking with her and chatting with her, and getting sort of lost in her, and she's friendly to him, but clearly isn't quite as interested in him as he is in her. And we see kind of as he slips an extra an extra bun or something into her basket as he's serving her, kind of thing. And we see him kind of spruce himself up, just as he's coming in, though mostly only succeeding in spreading flour around him, around his face and hair. But I think we just sort of see this sort of little moments of his growing infatuation with her.
Cool. Back to you, and actually I will then back to you, Rory. I think that we see the same scene play out, but rather than you falling, collapsing into a pile of bones, you come upon these tubs with corpses that are being dissolved away, and you can change your burnt into eaten away, because I think that there are now, you can feel that the miasma is burning through you, and that will be a problem unless
Rescue.
yeah, rescued or cured somehow.
Sure thing.
What do you do down here? There are these corpses, and actually let me see here. I might actually have a paint the scene question here. Yeah. Yeah. I think that there are also evidence here of someone doing experiments, sacrifices. You can't quite tell, but what evidence do you see that whatever doctor is at work here is not part of the respectable medical establishment?
I think there are like some charts on the wall and some books around, but these aren't like modern medical texts. It's alchemy and kind of the sort of the alchemical formulae sketched on the wall, and it's clear that this is whatever this is. It has a more occult bent to it.
Cool. As you're in this basement, I don't know, lab, sacrificial chamber, as I said, it's hard to tell. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think I think at first Rory is just going to call out, if you're skulking around in here somewhere, you may as well come out now and we'll make this quick. And as he's sort of drawing his knife from his boot.
Who's down there? A gruff voice calls out. Another ingrate crawling in through the sewers looking for a handout. Another of those shit-heeled beggars coming to my door.
I'm here looking for whoever's behind what's been plaguing this part of town. You can tell me what you're doing down here, and perhaps I'll find a little mercy for you.
A man in a dirty lab coat, with mussed hair, and really with you can still see like smears of something along his face and neck. I'm doing my experiments down here. I'm attempting to find a cure to whatever miasma takes this city. I find volunteers, as you can see, from those who will not be missed, sir. I assure you it is all properly scientific.
And I think kind of Rory's grip tightens on the knife for a minute, and there's that kind of moment where he almost like lunges forwards, but he kind of gets himself back under control and says, if what you say is true, then we might be working towards the same end, sir. And if not, I'll deal with you later. And he's going to kind of
He sniffs. Great men are never appreciated in their time.
How right you are, sir, how right you are. But tell me, what of your experiments told you about what's going on with us?
Give me a roll with presence here.
Sure thing.
Do you have anything you'd like to mark to give yourself advantage?
Let's see. Do I? Yes, I think I am actually going to mark my bottle of 150-year-old whiskey, and I think as kind of the he as I say, he kind of he'll put his knife back into his boot and pull out a a hip flask, and take a nip from it, which kind of seems to calm him down a little, and he'll offer the flask to the doctor.
Cool. Give me a roll with 3d6 plus your presence, and we'll keep the highest 2.
It's a 9.
Cool. He yeah, he gives the whiskey a sniff and then takes a quick like drinks it down quickly. Yeah, I think that I think that it is yeah, I'm just thinking of what he would actually be surprising here. Let's see. I think that the people here will engage in their nonsense superstitions about, you'll hear on the streets, old man miss and whatnot. But I can tell you that the miasma is nothing so much as a symptom of the moral inferiority of the people of Miswell Hill, and I seek to find a cure to that, sir. And I think that there is this, like, the clue you're getting here is not his theory, but is a reference to which is folk stories about Old Man Miz, the spirit of the river. But he gives you an eye. Still, I have to thank you, sir, for your discretion. I will, if someone as you could find me here, I shall have to vacate these premises, find a new venue to continue my work. The people here are ungrateful. So I'm just saying the consequence is that this guy is going to head out of town if you let him, because clearly he does not, as much as he says this is all legit, he does not want to be caught with this lab. What does Rory do?
I think Rory is going to take another look to the bodies corroding in the tubs, and as the man turns, he's going to bend down to his boot, come up and throw the knife between his shoulder blades.
Yeah, and I think as we cut away from that, Brandon, Oh, let me go to the right page. Describe Act 2, in which Daniel impotently fights back against the forces that prevent him from being with Dahlia.
So let's see. We see Daniel in a scene where he has literally thrown himself at the feet of Dahlia's as a maid, yes.
Yeah.
So he has sought after her, and he has literally thrown himself at the feet of her father, and is begging, for the opportunity, to be able to court her in marriage. And her father tries to put him off first with the fact that he is too poor and he cannot afford to keep her, humble though, simple though her station is, because she would have to stop working, that she does not, have any, while she looks on him kindly, she does not have any great affection, and that his conduct is embarrassing, and Daniel tries to contradict every bit of this, and finally the father ends up by literally flinging the young man out the door, grabbing him by the coat, propelling him out the door and slamming the door behind him. This is granted no gesture is small. It's dragging him strugglingly across the way, upending bits of furniture, as the young man protests at the top of his voice and begs for another opportunity to prove himself worthy and things like that, and it's all to no avail, but the audience loves it.
Cool. And we cut back to the Countess. Do you take up this offer as she holds out her hand for the locket?
I smile, and you see, and I perform a little pirouette there to show off my grace and my style, and I say, "Oh, Your Majesty, do you think I have such lack of penetration that I cannot tell real royalty from false?" And if you wish something from me, you will have to do it honestly, and not through the subterfuge of a guise, Your Highness, Your Majesty, excuse me, Your Majesty. Because I'm sure this is Titania.
Oh, that's funny, because she looks at you. Oh, so this one has met good Queen Mab as well.
Oh, indeed.
It has been so many years since good Queen Mab laid her crown upon my head, made me the queen of all of winter, that I could feed her all those poor souls who died cold and hungry, and they could be led to her golden realm.
And do they indeed reach her realm? I am sure present company being accepted, the promises of royalty are the royalty reserves for itself the decision as to which of its promises it keeps.
Oh, that I
and
cannot
which
say.
it chooses not to.
That I cannot say, miss. That I cannot say, milady. I merely collect the souls. I do not see them to their ends.
Why do you wish my locket so?
It's a precious thing.
It is indeed, and not well nor easily parted with, any more than you might part with your crown.
It's a precious thing it's precious knowledge that I hold as well, and I would not be so easily parted with it either. The world is changing. I can no longer rely upon good Queen Mab, and I must find some other magic of my own.
Or perhaps you must simply find another patron.
She titters. What would you suggest, miss? Who would you suggest?
You may bow, if you like. And I'm going to use the move giveth.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and mark that. And I think she bows. And
I lay my hand on her shoulder. I don't require from her, an old woman, any untoward obeisance. I lay my hand on her shoulder and say, you will summon to me those who are close and whose spirits are muddled and may not find their ways on. And I will see that they get home. And for this, you'll have my favor.
And for this, I'll tell you my own story, miss. I was not always the Snow Queen. I was once a mere servant to good Queen Beth. And then one night, Queen Mab paid a visit and bid Queen Beth to offer her the souls of 100 slaves from the colonies. And for that, England would know 100 years of prosperity. And then she turned to me and asked what I would wish for. And I wished to never feel the cold again. And for that, she bid me collect the souls of those who and for that she made me her Snow Queen.
You wished a good wish. And what I will grant you is that when your time comes, you will find your way to the golden door.
She smiles with her, and you can see it's a gummy smile with her 3 remaining teeth. And there's just one loud clack of her Nutcracker in her hands. And we cut to the last part of the night at the Grand Guignol. Ben, describe Act 3, in which Daniel engages in a desperate action to get what he wants. The final moment, just before the curtain falls, should be very bloody.
Yeah, I think that Daniel says, I will not suffer your cold walls, your cold boundaries any longer. To the father, I will bathe myself in the warmth of you and my love. And he goes about bludgeoning the man with almost the leg of a chair, echoing how his mother was beating dough earlier, and it's just it's very loud and sudden, and his father falls. The father of Dahlia falls, and he keeps bludgeoning and bludgeoning until he's soaked in the warmth of the blood, keeping away the cold. And that's when Dahlia comes home and finds what has befallen her father.
Great. We cut to you, Kazoku. What do you want of me? Spirit that pretends to be a cat.
I say, Kazoku looks at this cold place, this cold, lonely entity before him, and says, your family must not have loved you very much. They must have been very cold to you. If you like, you could come back with me. And my question to the ghost is, will you come join us in my home as family? You won't be so lonely anymore.
I think the ghost looks at you and family? Will I come to join you as family? Who do you think put me in here? Who do you think I was not good enough for my family, and so I had to die? I had to waste away in here. If I leave, how will I ever be good enough for them? I think that the thing it wants is for you to affirm like that this is what you need to do for the ghost if you want it to do this for you. You need to like.
Well, I think that was my question.
Yeah.
I was hoping to get a clue out of it, but
Oh, okay. I wasn't certain because it sounded like you wanted to do something.
Like, yeah, I don't necessarily want him to come to us, but that's my question is like, would you like to, you know?
Okay.
And so I was wondering it might interestingly become a clue in some way.
Okay, sure. I think in that case, like this has to be a legitimate offer then. Like
Yeah.
not just come and like join the house in general, but come
but
and
like,
become another of your cats.
oh, that would be amazing. I love it. Yes.
Okay. In that case, I think that the spirit looks at you and says, I can see you're trying so hard. You already are so many parts. You're so far from perfect. But I'll come with you. And I will break you and make you perfect, like you should be, like I should be. And you can feel the spirit enter your collective, and it fills you with an not a cold, but like you just are now unable, like there's just almost this feeling that lasts for the rest of the night that you just cannot. Actually, I'm just going to give you the condition that you are lacking in warmth. As the spirit becomes a part of you. And I'll ask you during the next dawn phase, just to wonder, what cat does the spirit become? But the clue there is an absence of all warmth. And I think we will pull to a close for the evening.
Stephen, does the Snow Queen give a clue?
Yes. She does give a clue because you like for doing that. She demanded one thing, but I think in making her your follower, you still get the clue.
Yes.
It is the story of the Snow Queen. That is the clue.
That's what I thought. Right.
Cool. But yeah, thanks everyone. I had a lot of fun this evening. I'm looking forward to playing with you all again next week, but I'm just gonna take us off the air now. Bye.